recording is on, and then I'll just open up, let everybody in the waiting room as soon as we hit 5:30.
Great.
And I will put my screen up so we have the agenda up there. All right. I'm going to admit everybody from the waiting room. We should be all set.
All right, let me know when we're ready.
All right, everybody's in.
All right, well, good evening. Good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Traffic Commission meeting on Thursday, February 9th, 2023. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Traffic Commission will be conducted via remote participation. We will post an audio recording, audio-video recording, transcript, and other comprehensive record of these proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the City of Somerville website. May I get a quorum, please, if we have a quorum for this meeting?
Yes. So I'll do a roll call vote. Chair Lathan,
Yes, here.
Lena Webb,
Here.
Lieutenant Reimel,
Here. Here.
Deputy Chief Tierney,
Here.
and I just admitted a few more staff from the waiting room, but I don't see the counselor on the call. So that is 4 present and 1 absent.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's go over some meeting ground rules. Listen to the other side. Focus on issues, not personalities. Avoid questioning motives, and let's be polite, please. All right, groovy. Item number 1, acceptance of the minutes from the January 12th, 2023 Traffic Commission meeting. May I get a motion to accept or decline the acceptance of the meetings?
I will make a motion.
Great. Lieutenant Reimel, can you second? Are you
I will
accepting a second or denying or accepting?
I'll accept it.
Great. All right, can I get a roll call vote to vote on the acceptance of the minutes from January 12th, 2023?
Yes. Lena Webb,
Yes.
Lieutenant Reimel,
Yes.
and Deputy Chief Tierney. Sorry, could you unmute?
Sorry about that. Yes.
Thank you. No problem. I just want to make sure it was audible. So that is 3 yes and 1 abstain with 1 absent.
Wonderful. So just confirming, we just really have 4 items on the agenda tonight. Item number 2. Am I missing any steps? We're okay to move forward? Okay. Item number 2. Regarding the metered parking spaces on Holland Street, Dakota Street, Newberry Street, Clairton Street, Simpson Ave and Irving Street, Thorndike Street, and Wallace Street. Request that the residential permit parking only regulation begin at midnight instead of 8 p.m. Residential permit parking only regulation would still end at 8 a.m. and the metered parking would still be in effect from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Who is here to discuss this item? Anyone?
Chair, this is Brad Ross, and I serve the City of Somerville as Director of Mobility in the Mayor's Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development. Good evening, and through you to the members of the Commission. If it's okay, Chair, may I provide just 60 seconds of background and then ask Project Manager Adam Polinsky to provide a little bit more detail on item 2. And then we can, of course, do the same thing at your discretion for items 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, before we go there, I want to officially recognize Councilor Gomez. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. So as the Commission knows, an interdepartmental staff group has been working in and around the Holland Street neighborhood for the last year or so. We have been in front of this commission numerous times recommending and requesting changes to curbside regulations to fulfill the vision of safety, equity, access, and business vitality in the neighborhood. One of the things that we have said to you all throughout the last year is that we are interested in continuing dialogue with residents, with business owners, and other stakeholders, because if any of the changes that we have requested and have been approved are not meeting their goals, we are committed to bringing back to you all housekeeping changes for your consideration. Over the last couple of months, since the big push of construction last fall, staff from the city's parking department, from the city's Economic Development Division, Engineering Division, and Mobility Division, of course, have continued to work with local stakeholders. And we've learned a bunch of important things through that dialogue. And the recommended changes for items 2, 3, 4, and 5 tonight really do reflect that lived experience and perspective that our staff are observing and that we're hearing from residents, the business community, ward councilor, and other advocates and activists. So I just wanted to offer that framing, and then perhaps if it's okay, Chair, Adam can take you through item number 2 specifically. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me all right? Yes, so in regards to item number 2, this is something that we heard from the business community in regards to just sort of overall feedback. We heard that the existing regulation where meters expire at 8 p.m. and resident parking begins at 8 p.m. Wasn't really working very well for them. A lot of them have businesses that operate past that time. And so anyone that comes in and doesn't have a city resident permit must then move by 8 p.m. And so their request was to allow those folks to stay a little bit later until the businesses close, and specifically until midnight. And so what we proposed here is that that we will basically have a 4-hour period where these metered spaces become unregulated. So the meters will expire at 8 p.m. But anyone that's already parked there frequenting one of these businesses will be allowed to stay there until midnight. And vice versa, if a resident gets there at 6 p.m. and they want to pay the meter for 2 hours, they can then stay there overnight because it will be unregulated from 8 to midnight and then is resident permit parking. So we believe that this is a sort of nice balance to accommodate both the business needs and still give residents flexibility if there are open spaces at these meters in the evening.
Any discussion from the committee members or questions?
I just would like to make a comment through you, Chair. I think this is a really skillful, good, nimble solution to this problem. And I assume you're talking a lot about the restaurants in the area, and this midnight is a really great time to end. I just feel like I just want to voice my support. I think it's a really good solution. Thanks for sharing.
Any further comment? Hearing none, may I get a roll call vote to not roll call vote. Can I get a motion to either accept or deny item number 2?
I can make a motion to accept.
Great,
I'll second it.
wonderful. May I get a roll call vote to accept item number 2 regarding the metered parking spaces on Holland Street, Curtis Street, Newberry Street, Clarendon Street, Simpson Ave, Irvin Street, Thorndike Street, and Wallace Street. Requests that the residential permit parking only regulation begin at midnight instead of 8 p.m. and the residential permit parking only regulation would still end at 8 a.m. and metered parking would still be in effect from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. A roll call vote to accept this.
Yes, Lena Webb,
Yes.
Lieutenant Rymel,
Yes.
Deputy Chief Tierney,
Yes.
and Councilor Gomez Moacad.
I have a question. I wasn't able to hear everything because I had Zoom issues, so I don't feel comfortable voting. So can I abstain?
Yes, you can abstain.
Okay, thank you.
So that would be 3 yes and 2 abstain.
All right, that has passed.
Yes.
Moving on to item number 3. Regarding the curb on the west side of Moore Street from approximately 30 feet south of Holland Street to 90 feet south of Holland Street. Request to convert the existing 60 feet loading zone to residential permit parking only. I'm also seeing 3 other items on Holland Street. Is there any objection that we discuss all of these 3 items together? Hearing none. Item number 4.
One question I have, are they gonna be voted on as one if we do that, or are they gonna be voted on separately? Because
they would be voting on as one if we do that. So I don't mind
And
going.
I, and
separately.
I object to that.
Great. Let's talk about item number 3. Who's here from the administration to discuss? Brad?
Chair, if it's okay, I'd love for Adam to do the same kind of quick summary of the logic behind item number 3, if that's okay.
Wonderful.
Through the chair, on Moore Street for item number 3, we had originally proposed 2 loading zones, one on each side of the street, closest to Holland Street as part of our proposal in the fall. We have since heard from both residents and from the business closest to that location, Angelina's, that the second loading zone, the one that is in question here on the west side or the north side of the street, is not necessary, and that would be better served by both the business and by residents as residential permit parking only. And so our request is to revert that loading zone back to residential permit parking as it existed previously.
Chair, you're on mute.
Any discussion from the committee?
Yes, I have some questions about that one.
Great.
So you have spoken to the businesses there, namely Angelina's, that gets affected by that. I know that that section of Holland Street has not been striped yet, according to the plan that is coming about. However, they're still loading on Holland Street every day. I drive that street twice a day, every day. And my concern is taking away that of the loading zone, because the whole workability of that plan as far as the fire station in Teal Square goes is that they are not parking to load on Holland Street. So I don't know if that's not currently in effect because the road has not been striped yet, and that new parking hasn't been bumped out from the protected bike lane, but that's our whole approval of this plan was based on that they would not be loading on Holland Street, and they currently still are. So I guess that's my objection to making any changes at this point, unless you can fill me in on something different. Thank you.
Chair, through you. Thanks, Deputy. That's great feedback. And Adam, you've been working with the business owner directly, and you've been out on the block many, many times. Can you respond to the Deputy Chief's question, please?
Yes, through the chair. So what we learned from Angelina's in regards to this specific situation is that they typically use the loading zone on the right side of the street, which we will retain for some of those bigger box truck operations. And on the left, what they've traditionally used that for is for smaller delivery vehicles. However, that hasn't worked well for them because they will end up staying there for more than the 5-minute passenger or the 20-minute passenger plate as it's currently stated. And so he does have business permits for that and can stay a little bit longer. And then, when businesses are wrapping up the goal was to have more flexibility to have resident parking overnight. And so I don't believe that it would affect the loading operations from that perspective based on what we've seen to date. But if we implement this and we are finding that it doesn't change or that we are having more issues with loading on Holland Street, we could always revisit.
Okay, to the chair, I haven't noticed the loading zone being used on Moore Street is what I guess my point is. It's still been Holland Street. Is it that we're not enforcing that yet because the road is not striped? Or, I mean, every evening you can come up westbound on Holland and you'll see that they're loading. And in the morning and sometimes in the middle of the day, there's still deliveries, and the truck is always parked in front of the credit union at this point. And I know that those spaces have been removed, but until there's enforcement, how can they, until there's enforcement, are they utilizing the loading zone correctly? How can we tell that we can get rid of some. So I guess that's my issue there. I'm reluctant to take away a loading zone when they're not using, when they're using Holland Street as the current loading zone, in my observation. And I've been keeping an eye on it because I've been noticing it. And, you know, there's a big creamery truck there parked there last night for quite some time. And, you know, I kept an eye on it just to see how it was going, because I happened to be working up there. And just my observation, and I'm hesitant to remove loading zone when they're not being used currently. Thank you.
Yes, Leah?
Hi, I have a question through you, Chair. You mentioned Angelina's, but there's also PJ Ryan's and Rudy's and you know, businesses up there. Do we know if those other businesses are using that, and have they weighed in on, you know, their ability to use it and benefit from using it?
Through the chair, to the best of my knowledge, the other businesses in that area have been less concerned with the Moore Street loading zones in particular, and that it is Angelina's that has been the most focused on utilizing that. And so that was one of the reasons that we were thinking that the two weren't necessary. But I do hear the point about not having that been fully enforced yet.
Yeah, I would like to also follow up in agreement with Commissioner Tierney, because you know, it's very easy to pull your truck up onto Holland. It takes a little bit more work, you know, to pull into a loading zone on a side street. So I think this is something that happens a lot with anyone trying to park. Like, you're gonna try to go for the easiest, you know, you don't have to maneuver your large vehicle. So I very much agree that those loading zones are needed because of the fact that people are making deliveries. They're just making it on Holland. So there are deliveries being made. I would tend to agree that rather than taking that space away, because you're going to see the large trucks encroaching on the bike lane or the sidewalk, or, you know, crosswalks. And so I also would wonder, I would tend more to try to think about maybe, you know, enforcing that and getting people to use what's there before deciding whether it's useful or not. Thank you.
Right. I'm going to, waiting on a statement. There's a question from someone. So if you guys just please hold for a minute.
Yes, Chair, there's a member of the public with their hand raised. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
He's going to send me a statement.
Okay, I can unmute to
Okay.
Jim if you want to. You should be able to unmute now.
Jim, you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. So hello, Chair and Commissioners, that I live at the house that I own at 3 Moore Street, which is on the side of Moore Street in question. I've been in conversation with Brad and with Steve Stamidas, the owner of Angelina's Pizza. What I can tell you, I am right now, my window looks right out. My desk is in the window looking out at this area of the street. What I can tell you is that there are trucks loading here regularly, both parking on the opposite side of the street, which is the commercial side of the street. It's the back of the building that used to be Salvador Restaurant. That the trucks typically don't come to this residential part of the street in front of my house and 5 Moore Street, because what they do, at least if they're servicing Angelina's, is they park so that the back of the truck comes up into the Angelina's rear parking area here. That if they came all the way back in front of my house or Anne-Marie and Paul's house, then they would have to take their hand trucks out into the street and bring them around. or try to bring the hand trucks up on the sidewalk, which they just don't do. So this area is being regularly used for loading across the street and just in the area up, at the very end of the street. But the trucks don't, so that happens all the time. I can tell you, I see it regularly because I'm here in my window working from home all the time. That for us as homeowners, it's a significant inconvenience and problem right now to have this area blocked off so that as residents, I don't have a driveway. So the only parking I have is street parking for myself and my upstairs neighbors. So this area being blocked off on both sides of the street and then not being used at all, because it's not being used as a loading zone. Across the street is, not this side of the street. It's a 5-minute limit, which means that Steve's delivery trucks can't park here as they typically have using their business permit. So I would ask you to consider that rather than blocking off this parking now, if there's an issue that arises once the striping happens and once the full impact is felt, then I would certainly understand as a homeowner the need for that. I want safe streets. I want safe bicycling. But right now, what we have is a situation where, as a resident, I can't park here in front of my own house, and it's not being used. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you about the time limit on that, but thank you so much. And any more discussion from the committee?
Yes, through the chair.
Yes.
Can I ask a question of the mobility department?
Absolutely.
How I would like to know how if you've been working in conjunction with parking and monitoring that area more carefully. It looks like we have two different views right now. We want to make sure we serve the community in the best way possible. And I'm wondering if you work with parking to do some intense monitoring of the area, kind of round the clock, to understand what are the behaviors that are happening from either loading and unloading and observing what's open and what's not. Because it looks like we're getting information that we do have loading on Holland Street in areas that shouldn't happen, that is obstructing. I'm assuming Commissioner Tierney is a concern about the access for our Somerville Fire Department, and then we have the other issue of access of not blocking bike lanes, etc. So it looks like we have a little bit of we need to do a little more due diligence. So I just wanted to check in what if you have been working with parking and intensely monitoring it. And I want to respect the residents' perspective because he has his eyes there all the time. But Commissioner Tierney is, I'm assuming you're stationed up there and you also have eyes into that area.
Through the chair, thanks for the questions, Counselor. And again, it's really important and helpful for our staff to hear these perspectives from folks in the neighborhood at SFD, residents, as well as the business community. Chair, if it's okay, I'd love for Adam or for Director Suzanne Rinford to also describe some of the monitoring work that our various departments have been performing to try to understand existing conditions and recommend this change for you.
Yes, that's great.
Yes, I can start, Suzanne, through the chair. So on mobility's end, we have been working with the parking department. I would like to note that we only started enforcement pretty recently because the project is still in an incomplete state, and so we want to give folks time to adjust to the new regulations. And I'll let Suzanne speak more to how much enforcement has been occurring. But mobility staff have also gone out and done some parking counts as well. And that is only a snapshot into what's actually happening, but we have been trying to monitor the conditions. The challenge, as Commissioner Tierney stated, is that the project is still incomplete at this point. So we're trying to balance the data we've collected and understanding what's actually happening on the street with being responsive to resident and business concerns, which have been coming in frequently as a result of the changes. So I'll turn it over to Suzanne for any additional information about enforcement.
Hi, through the chair, thank you for the question. So we, as Adam said, we just recently started enforcing up there. We were giving warnings in the past. But if any of the residents see a particular time where the loading zone is being abused in any way, it's great if they could put in a 311 alert, because that will help us to target the enforcement. It may be that the patrol needs to be adjusted, but they do definitely enforce up there.
Any further comment from the committee members?
Hi, Chair Lathan, through you to mobility. I wonder, because we kind of are looking at two sides of this, is there any way to make the loading zones temporal? So having them be loading zones for a specific period of the day in order to balance that need. Understanding I don't know when delivery times are, if they're happening throughout the day, but just kind of thinking as like a bit of a compromise possibility of potentially having time slots for the type of parking to be used there. Thanks.
Through the chair, I can jump in and say that that is a possibility. We will need to follow up with the parking department because they are the boots on the ground and doing the actual enforcement. And so it has traditionally been easier to do full-time loading zones. But this is a situation, I think, in which we could at least discuss whether or not something like that might be appropriate. So don't want to make any commitments, but yes, it is an option.
Further discussion from the committee members? Yes, there's no,
My office has been watching it for the last couple of months since its inception. And the only observation we made is the trucks to come in off of Clarendon to come all the way around to get to Moore Street. Even the best truck drivers in the world have a hard time making the swing around those side streets, especially the Pepsi, the Cokes, the beer trucks, the semi-tractor trailers. Even if they were to get onto Moore Street, they're just simply too long. They block both the handicap ramp, the hydrant, and the resident driveway. Those trucks that are small enough to make it into the parking spot don't even go around at all. They simply just back up more the wrong way and park there. And even the smallest truck is still long enough that it might not block the driveway, but it blocks the hydrant and partially blocks the handicap ramp. So those delivery trucks, the majority of them are just too long for that spot on Moore Street. I've given several verbal warnings to the drivers. They're in a rock and a hard place. The trucks are so simply too long to park there. They have no choice but to park on Holland Street. And if it's tied up, it's a free for all. Thank you.
thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Through the chair, question for mobility. So based on Lieutenant Araimo's comments, which is what I sort of suspected, is that the trucks are not going to turn around. Nobody wants the liability of hitting a car as you're turning around. Have you explored now that if we were to approve this, will you be looking carefully about rectifying any loading on Holland Street, providing alternate options? I know in Ball Square, we had changed the sizes of some loading zones because they were a little too small for the trucks that were there. So is this something you're looking into carefully in order to fine tune the situation?
Through the chair, yes, this is an ongoing process. So this is, as you know, we had these changes originally approved in October of last year. We did some of those parking counts in November and December. We had a meeting with business owners in January. We've heard from some residents like Jim and from the ward councilor, and this is sort of our first sort of collection of feedback and attempt to address some of the issues that we heard. And this is very much an ongoing process. And so I think we want to address some of the most sort of obvious things that we felt we could rectify now while the project is still sort of in this semi-finished state. continue to monitor things over the next few months, and then hopefully come back once the striping is fully done, do a little bit more evaluation, and then figure out if anything else needs to change. But it's very much an open dialogue, and that's the case not just for this, but for all of our projects.
So through the chair, I do encourage to follow up. Again, that path is a path for the kids from the west who are biking in. I know it happens, personally know one of them. And it's also, there's a daycare a little bit close to the west too, that I see parents with their cargo bikes as well. So I think we're trying to balance a couple of things. And I do encourage that we carefully look at where trucks are going. It's kind of a dance that we have to do. They're not, trucks are not small. Sometimes drivers are new. They don't know how to manage our city streets. They might be coming from places where they don't have to manage urban streets. So I cautiously urge you to keep on looking at this really carefully.
Yeah, Leah?
Just a really quick question through you to mobility. What do we know when the striping is going to be, like about when you plan for the striping to be all set there? Just to think about like a timeline between kind of the state we're in now versus what we're hoping to have.
Through the chair, thanks for the question. So the striping season will commence approximately April 15th. We do not have any firm schedule commitments from the contractor or their subcontractor at this time, but I will note for the commission and for the public that the contract is set to expire, I believe, at the end of June, right, Adam? So therefore, the contractor and subcontractor have many reasons to be motivated to take care of all remaining work in that springtime period.
Wonderful. Further discussion? All right, hearing none. May I get a motion to either accept or deny item number 3?
I'll make a motion to deny.
Second,
All right. We have a motion to deny item number 3 regarding the curb cut on the west side of Moore Street from approximately 30 feet south of Holland Street to 90 feet south of Holland Street. Request to convert the existing 60 feet loading zone to residential permit parking only. May I get a roll call vote, please, to deny item number 3?
Yes. Counselor Gomez Moacad,
Yes.
Lena Webb,
Yes.
Lieutenant Rymel,
yes.
Deputy Chief Tierney.
Yes.
That's 4 yes in favor to deny and 1 abstain. So the motion does not pass.
Motion does not pass.
The motion to deny passes.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I want to thank also Jim for joining us this evening and providing his comments. Moving on to item number 4. Regarding the curb on the east side of Clarendon Street to approximately 20 feet south of Holland Street to 95 feet south of Holland Street, request to convert 75 feet of 30-minute parking to residential permit parking only. Who from the administration is here to discuss this item?
Chair, we'd like to follow the same framework if possible. Adam will be in a best position to provide the background. Suzanne and her team can chime in as helpful for the commission. Thank you.
Through the
Yes.
chair, this is a bit of a housekeeping item, as we did not actually end up moving those 30-minute parking signs over to Claremont. We had learned that Renee's was in a transition period and ended up closing. And so the primary business that those spaces were for no longer needed them. And so we held off on putting those, actually implementing those signs, and have not heard that there has been any desire to have them implemented. And so given that we are trying to balance the needs of both residents and businesses, and that those spaces have been used by residents, we felt that it was appropriate to just simply leave the residential permit parking signage, but that does mean clarifying the traffic regulations and reverting that back to residential permit parking because we had originally approved it to become 30-minute.
Did you say Renee's closed?
That is my understanding.
Oh, no. All right, discussion from the committee members. Hearing none. May I get a motion to approve or deny item number 4? Counselor Gomez,
Motion to approve.
may I get a second? Leah,
Approve.
thank you, Lena. All right.
I can second it.
Okay,
I wasn't paying attention, sorry.
that's great. All right, can I get a roll call vote on the approval item number 4 regarding the curb on the east side of Clarendon Street to approximately 20 feet south of Holland Street to 95 feet south of Holland Street? Request to convert 75 feet of 30-minute parking to residential parking, to residential permit parking only. Roll call vote, please, to approve item number 4.
Counselor Gomez Moacad,
Yes.
Lena Webb,
Yes.
Lieutenant Rymel,
Yes,
Deputy Chief Tierney.
Yes,
So that's 4 yes and 1 abstain.
Wonderful. I missed it. Who abstained?
Oh, sorry, the four yes, and then 1 abstention would be the chair.
Oh, groovy. Thank you. That was my own self. Alrighty. Moving on to item number 5. Regarding the curb on the west side of Newbury Street from approximately 130 feet south of Holland Street to 150 feet south of Holland Street. Request to convert 1 metered parking space to the residential permit parking only. Adam, are you here to discuss this item as well?
Through the chair, I am. This one is in regards in particular to, so there are 3 meters that we had installed to replace residential permit parking when the project was approved in the fall. We have not, in the parking counts we've done, noticed that those have been particularly well used and have gotten some concerns from the residents of that area. And so to address this, we felt that it was appropriate at this time to reduce that to 2 meters, which we feel like will still be accurate, and to give 1 additional residential permit parking space back on that block.
Discussion from the committee members? Hearing none, may I get a motion to approve or deny item number 5, please?
I did have a quick
Oh, I'm sorry.
question. As we are turning, sometimes when we're shifting principal arterial streets, reshaping them to put bike lanes, are we finding sometimes we are adding metered spaces on the side streets? Are we finding, is this just an isolated instance, or in general they don't get used? Or you can't make that statement because it's way too generalized?
Chair, through you, I think the quick response would be we do our best to monitor and collect data at every location that we can. We don't have those statistics off the top of our head, but happy to try to work to see from our project files what we have learned, because this has been a common tool, even going back to the days of East Broadway in 2014 and 2015. We were installing 1 or 2 meters to support the small business district on residential side streets. So I don't have a good clean answer for you about a standard in terms of utilization, but in this case, we have been out collecting data, and the data have suggested that 2 meters should be sufficient for business activities, and 1 could be better utilized for resident permit parking.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I'll do a motion to approve.
Great. May I get a second? Deputy Tierney,
second,
may I get a roll call vote for the approval regarding the curb on the west side of Newbury Street from approximately 130 feet south of Holland Street to 150 feet south of Holland Street. Request to convert 1 meter parking space to the residential permit parking only.
Yes. Counselor Gomez Moacad,
Yes.
Lena Webb,
Yes.
Lieutenant Raimel. Sorry, Lieutenant Raimel, could we get that? Sorry, you're on mute.
Yes.
Thank you. And Deputy Chief Tierney?
Yes.
So that's 4 yes and 1 abstain.
Wonderful. Item number 5 has been approved. Thank you, the committee members, for your diligent discussion this evening. And I really enjoy when we're able to really have honest discussions and not just necessarily, it's important for the public to know that we actually are adhering to these and listening to these and not just rubber stamping these items. So I really appreciate the back and forth. And thank you again, Jim, for attending. May I get a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make the
Motion
motion.
I'll second it.
All right. Roll call vote, please, to adjourn this incredible meeting.
Yes. Chair Lathan,
Yes.
Counselor Gomez Moacad,
Yes.
Lena Webb,
Yes.
Lieutenant Raimel,
Yes.
Deputy Chief Tierney,
Yes.
and that's 5 yes to adjourn.
Wonderful. This meeting is adjourned. Have a great groovy evening.
Oh, I was waiting for Groovy. I was going to suggest it. Good. Groovy tunes, she usually says.
Yeah. See you guys later.
Bye-bye.